Hi, and welcome to Soul Naturals. This is Dr. Cowell Andrews, and I'm going to be talking about the Stop Sugar Spikes lever today. Yeah, that's where the title page was, Stop Sugar Spikes. So what is this lever? As you remember, soul levers are various areas in which there's opportunity to drive change toward health. And this is, again, our overall interest in you is we want you to be healthy. So stopping the sugar spikes is a lever because too much sugar, and we all kind of know this, but I'm going to explain a little bit about how it works. Hopefully that is information that you can benefit from. Too much sugar, widespread, deleterious. That's your word for the day. One of my favorite words. Deleterious, meaning a bad effect, a problematic effect. Too much sugar has a really problematic, deleterious effect on your entire body, your microbiome, your brain, your heart health, and your energy, among many of the things that affects. So here's some big picture. Sugar, also known as soluble carbohydrates, comes in primarily two different packages. And then there are some very complex carbohydrates that are not actually considered sugars, but can be broken down into sugars. So you have simple sugars, which are the monosaccharides, and that contains fructose, glucose, and galactose. Those are your simple sugars. Complex sugars, these are two bonded monosaccharides, and so they call them disaccharides. So these complex sugars include sucrose, which is table sugar that you're probably most familiar with. And that's a combination of glucose and fructose together. Then we have lactose, which is the sugar in milk. It's really only in milk. Glucose and galactose make up that sugar. And then we have maltose, and that's just two bonded glucoses. So glucose plus another glucose. We don't really look at maltose very much unless you're in the habit of malting grains and creating usually alcohol out of malted grain. Sugars are primarily part of what makes up plant tissue, but they're not the same kind of sugar that we think of when we think about eating sugar and sugar that's really bad for you. And so fructose is found throughout the plant world. It's in fruits, it's in vegetables, primarily in root vegetables, it's in cane sugar, it's in honey. Fructose is the most sweet of all the sugars. Now, plants contain both glucose and fructose in them. And so some of the amount of glucose seems to be not as much as the glucose we eat when we are having table sugar. And so when we look at how plants change as they ripen, what happens in general is that glucose is higher while the plant is growing, but then fructose is then higher in the plant as it's ripening. And so before it's ripe, you'll have more glucose than fructose in the plant. As it's ripening, you'll have more and more fructose. When it's overripe, you'll have the most fructose in the plant. Glucose is actually a product of photosynthesis. So the sun helps the plants create glucose. And products that, or plants, or how do I say this? Honey. Honey and dried fruits are really your most, have the most glucose in them in terms of pure glucose. But glucose is included in most plants. It's just that there's not as much of it as you might think. It's not pure sugar the way we think of sugar. What happens is when we digest food, that digestion will turn plant starches into glucose. Okay, so that's glucose and fructose. Galactose, of course, is a part of lactose. It's also part of the antigens on your red blood cells that help determine what kind of blood type you are, just as a little interesting factoid. Sucrose, the best source of sucrose is sugar cane and sugar beets. And so sucrose is that combination of glucose and fructose. That's what we mostly think of in terms of table sugar. And we mostly get that from sugar cane and sugar beets. Lactose milk, maltose malting grain, like we said. And so then we want to look at what is blood glucose anyway. So it's the usual measure of blood sugar. So it really indicates your body's not functioning correctly. There's something that's going wrong so that glucose is hanging out in your blood and it's not making it into the cells, or there's too much glucose to even, the cells are maybe overwhelmed. And so when the cells become overwhelmed and start shutting it down, then we call that insulin resistance. Because insulin helps, and we'll talk about this in a second, insulin helps that glucose get into the cells. So glucose isn't the same thing as sugar. And so when you eat sugar, you're eating glucose and fructose, if you're thinking about table sugar. So we measure the blood glucose. That's not the exact same thing as the sugar you just ate. But we do have glucose in our diets. It is kind of critical for our bodies to run. Glucose is really easily available for the body in general, because it's really critical for our body to be able to have a metabolism and create energy and run. Manufactured foods contain a lot of glucose. Some fruits and vegetables, fruits and some vegetables, I should say, have glucose. There's less as they ripen. Your body will make glucose. And so things like bread, complex carbs, breads, potatoes, fruit are much of what the body uses to make glucose. And so your body will break down those fruits and vegetables into both glucose and fructose. So that's really not really the problem. Fruits and vegetables aren't really the problem. The problem is that your body has been assaulted by other forms of sugars that aren't just fruits and vegetables. It comes from a lot of manufactured foods that adds to it things that make it harder for your body to manage the sugar and harder for your body to work. One example is corn syrup. And so science has done this to us, you could say. So the starch in corn converts to glucose, but then what happens is that glucose is then subjected to some enzymes that convert part of the glucose and cornstarch into fructose. And so it has more fructose in it than it normally would. That's why they call it high fructose corn syrup. So it's corn syrup, the enzymes give it more fructose than it should normally have, then it's high fructose corn syrup. And we all know high fructose corn syrup, bad for you. It's addictive. It makes you want to eat more food. One thing you could do that would be fairly simple to help manage this lever is just go into your kitchen, find everything that has high fructose corn syrup in it and get rid of it, or find a substitute that doesn't contain high fructose corn syrup. So let's look more at the big picture of sugar metabolism. Some sugars are not metabolized by the body. So they taste sweet, but they don't really do anything else to you. Stevia and monk fruit are like that. They taste sweet. Your body doesn't metabolize them. Monk fruit has a number of really useful, so does stevia, useful health effects on the body, but they will only make it taste sweet. They won't be metabolized by your body. Sometimes this quality of them has been taken advantage of in markets such that there's so much, or they're added to other chemicals that make them have a hard time on your gut, make your gut really resistant to more stevia or monk fruit. Usually it's other artificial sugars that are the problem. And sometimes these get mixed up with artificial sugars because they're also quite sweet and they're not metabolized. And so some people have trouble, most of their trouble in terms of their gut being able to tolerate sugars that are not like sucrose, is because it's artificial sugar that's added mostly. Okay, and then in terms of your metabolism, that energy in your sugar, which gets broken down into both glucose and fructose, is now available to your body as a fuel. Both the glucose and the fructose get broken down in ways that are different, but they're both available as fuel for your body. So glucose is absorbed in your gut, which stimulates the pancreas to release insulin. If you're absorbing fructose into your gut, your pancreas will not release insulin because it is not glucose. Glucose is what sets off insulin response, not fructose. So insulin tells your cells to take in the sugar. It's like open up, open up, open wide. It's like you're feeding a little kid. Here comes the train. Here you go. Open up, and in goes the glucose. So then the cell can run and energy and perform all the tasks it needs to do. Insulin tells the body to stop burning fat because here we have this marvelous, marvelous glucose as our energy source. And so insulin turns off fat burning, and it tells the cells to open up so that they can take in the sugar. When you have too much glucose, then it's stored. You store it as glycogen in your muscles, or it goes to the liver, and the liver says, oh, this is way too much glucose. We're going to convert it. And it converts it into lipids or fats. So only glucose metabolism sets off insulin. Insulin helps get that glucose into the cell. Fructose gets right into the cell. It doesn't need insulin to open the door. So fructose more easily gets into the cell and it's absorbed. So the fructose that you take in doesn't increase insulin. That doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean like, oh, it's a freebie. That's why it has a lower glycemic index. But just because it has a lower glycemic index doesn't mean that it's not doing some of the damage that excessive sugar can do. So you absorb fructose in the gut, and then it's sent directly to the liver. It's not actually even in the blood. And so you can't do a blood test for fructose because it goes straight to your liver. Fructose easily absorbed by our cells, doesn't need insulin. The liver then converts fructose to glucose. And so that fructose doesn't hit your blood, but when it goes to the liver can convert it to glucose. And so if your body needs energy, the liver will convert it to glucose. If your body's like, you know what, we're good right now, then the liver is going to say we have excess and convert it to fat. And so it raises your lipids. And the fat that it gets turned into are triglycerides. That's what your liver is creating. Great for energy, but again, not in excess. So none of this stuff is terrible. It's just the excess is what's terrible. Unless, of course, I think it's high fructose corn syrup, which I think is terrible. So this gives fructose a lower glycemic index. Like I said, it doesn't spike sugar the same way, but be careful. Be careful, because that doesn't mean that it's safe at all. It's just the same. It's just you're not measuring it in your blood. You're not spiking your blood sugar. It goes to your liver. Then the liver might create glucose that might spike your blood sugar, but the liver will also turn it into triglycerides. So it still affects your blood sugar, just indirectly. Knowing that the blood doesn't contain fructose makes it a little hard to estimate if you think, well, you know, how am I going to know how much fructose I have? And again, like I said, it goes to the liver, gets transformed into fats that are called triglycerides. And so if you have a high triglyceride count, that's another good indication of too much fructose. And as you know, it's also an indicator of cardiac problems. Another problem that results from too many triglycerides, too much fructose, too much glucose to your liver is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And so this, we actually mentioned this recently in connection with rhodiola, and rhodiola was shown to help non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And so rhodiola would be a good answer to some of this. But NAFLD is a problem for any excess intake, either fructose or glucose, because of that the liver turning it into fat, into triglycerides. So again, we need triglycerides for energy. It's very useful. We don't need too many of them. And non-alcoholic fatty liver disease has other problems that come along with poor liver functioning. So any poor liver functioning problem connected. But cirrhosis, like damaged, dying liver, and high blood pressure, those are a couple of the things that come to mind right away when you think about your non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So again, like I said, excess is the problem. So you want to eliminate those ultra-processed foods. Fruits and vegetables are useful. It's the ultra-processed foods, which when you think about pizza or ice cream or hot dogs, hamburgers, all of that, the stuff that you buy from the store, ultra processed in general. Complex carbs are useful. They shouldn't be thrown out just because they have the word carb in them. Spinach is a type of carbohydrate, right? So just because it's a complex carb doesn't mean it's bad because it says carb. Just be careful so that the way that you're eating is working well for you. Look at your results. Look at how you feel. A lot of times what we found is that the order that you eat your food in is really helpful. There's some preliminary indicators in the scientific literature that support this idea of eating vegetables first. Vegetables and protein come first before the more things like bread or rice. That when that's last or later in the meal, that's much more helpful for your body. So eliminate the ultra processed foods, eating fruits and vegetables, complex carbs, more exercise, more sleep, more water. Sleep, exercise, and water are critical to everything across the board, it seems. And certainly here, they make a huge difference in terms of how your body handles sugar and in terms of helping you so that you're not doing excess sugar. Sometimes you do excess sugar because you're tired and you need more energy and you want the fast energy, but the fast energy has a terrible impact on your body. So, and then don't eat all day and all night. That's another way that excess is the problem. So excessive sugar creates damage in the brain, cardiovascular system, your kidneys, your liver, and like we said, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. How can you move these levers? So I'm going to give you a few ideas on how to move levers and some of the ways in which Solle can help you move the levers. So first, can you limit your food intake to 8 hours per day, maybe even less? I think being extreme is maybe helpful for some extreme health cases, but if you look at just even 8 hours, a lot of times we tend to eat outside of that 8-hour window. So start practicing limiting your food intake to 8 hours per day. It doesn't always have to be the same 8 hours, but it is easier on your body if it's at least pretty close to the same 8 hours. You could go to 6 too, if that seems to work well for you. Solle can help you by helping you manage carb cravings that sometimes make you want to eat beyond those 8 hours. So things like Solle Complete and Cinnamate can help curb carb cravings. Getting enough nutrients is critical. If you want to not be hungry, your body has to have sufficient nutrients. And so you want to find nutrient-rich foods. Avant greens is an example of something that's very rich in nutrients. And then you want to get enough good fats. If you don't have enough good fats, then your body will also be hungry. And so you can look at Infatuate and Soul Megas as some ways to make sure that the fats that you're putting in your body are really good fats for you. How about the lever for drinking plenty of water? My suggestion here is you make this a habit, because when it's a should, then it hurts. It's painful. It takes up energy. It's discouraging to just should on yourself for not drinking enough water. So instead of using the should, just go with a habit. Create a habit, reinforce yourself, tell yourself you're doing a great job. Find some way to make it so that it's more reinforcing for you to drink water than it is to not drink water. So I'm going to say that again. Make sure that you can find a way so that it is more reinforcing for you to drink water than it is for you to not drink water. Plain water is critical on its own. Solle can also help you improve your habit in terms of drinking by drinking each of the 4 foundational drinks. We have seen a lot of really exciting and helpful impacts of drinking those 4 foundational drinks in terms of overall health, energy, happiness, etc. Another lever you can move is taking really good care of your liver. You know, the liver lever, love your liver lever, all those things, right? Be a liver lever lover. That's just for Greg. Doing all the regular things where you are exercising, sleeping, drinking water, etc. That's critical for your liver. And so it's kind of handy that those basic things are so good all throughout your body all the time for all the things, isn't it? So you can be a better liver lever lover. Avoiding toxins is important. Sometimes we skip over like the air freshener in the bathroom, or the thing that you're using to clean with. It might smell nice, but it might be neurotoxic and liver toxic, hepatotoxic. Avoiding alcohol. That's another thing. Of course, we want to avoid alcohol. The latest research seems to indicate there's no amount of alcohol that is actually safe and helpful. How Solle can help? Well, there are a couple ideas. There are so many ways Solle can help you here. I could not even list them, so I'll just list a couple. One of them is the Soleflex PI, which helps your liver instead of hurting your liver when you use it to reduce inflammation. Other painkillers, aspirin, Tylenol, and NSAIDs, etc., acetaminophen, those are damaging to your liver, whereas Soleflex PI actually is helpful to your liver. Not only not damaging, but actually helpful. Avant Greens has a number of tonic herbs in there that will help support liver functioning. So like I said, pretty much all of the things, all of the souls, right? Another lever is what we call postprandial exercise. And that would be exercise you do after a meal. One of the best times for you to exercise is after a meal in terms of your goal for lowering blood sugar. If you're having trouble getting moving, one of the ways Solle can help is that you try adding some Solfit GP in for a little more energy. Then we have this lever of processed foods and sugar. This is a hard one because you kind of get addicted to these. But again, this is about habit. You put in a different habit and your body will adjust. So find one, here's an idea. You don't have to do this, but it's an idea. Find 10 easy recipes you like, you're good at, and that are fast, and start incorporating those into your lifestyle. You want to focus on vegetables and pleasure instead of misery. And then focusing on better microbiome health is really critical as well. And so what you're looking at are, like we talked about, the probiotics and all the things that help you with your microbiome. And I have to say, sleep, exercise, water, all of those things are critical. Solle can help again with the carb cravings with Solle Complete and the Cinnamate. Drinking the foundational 4 drinks makes it easier to avoid sugar. Solfit GP gives you energy so that you can actually make your own dinner. So in sum, use at least some, look at that, in summary, use some, if not all, of these sugar levers. Leverage your way back into better health, smooth out your energy, avoid those energy spikes that are so hard on your body. And remember that 3-legged stool: sleep, exercise, what you're eating, and then the seat of the stool is drinking enough water. That's critical to moving a lever. Hopefully this was helpful, and I look forward to speaking with you next time. Thanks.